Hello, everyone. Welcome to our CTS and Peplink Frontier webinar around Beyond Failover, Peplink Bonding, Fixed Wireless, and Starlink for true always-on connectivity. I will be your host today. My name is Alex Duncan. I run our strategy, mobility network strategy here at CTS Mobility. We are an elite Verizon partner. With me today, I've got a very distinguished panel of gentlemen. So Andy Hawk is joining us as the Enterprise Channel Director at Frontier, specializing in new generation connectivity solutions across satellite, 5G, and SD-WAN technologies. Matt McMinn, Director of Carrier Sales. Matt is a former Verizon wireless sales professional for 10 years. In his current role, Matt works very closely with the Verizon teams to help support their fixed wireless access goals through Peplink hardware. Casey Hyneman is the Enterprise Technical Director. He leads the engineering team at Frontier. Between all of us, my name Alex Duncan. I've had about 25 years of wireless expertise at BlackBerry and Samsung, and then 10 years at Verizon Wireless as well. So you've got a lot of folks that have been putting together enterprise solutions for quite some time on the webinar today. So I'll tell you a little bit about CTS Mobility. We've been in business for over 20 years. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas. We've got a 17,000 square foot warehouse where we run our operations out of. We've also got offices in Long Beach, California, and Punjab, India. Our brand really stands for reliability, efficiency, and new technology. We've been a Verizon elite partner for 13 plus years, really focused in on fixed wireless access and mobility solutions. Our status as a Verizon elite partner gets us the ability to do some things like prioritizing access to 5G solutions, getting better pricing advantages through our distribution channel, and our partners like Frontier. And we also have the ability to offer bill on behalf of with Verizon Wireless, which is a nice way for you to be able to take all these custom solutions that we're going to talk about today, bundle them up together, and put them on Verizon paper for billing. So that's a nice little perk that we've got. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Casey, who's going to walk us through some of the technical details on how bonding works with Peplink and Starlink and how it all works together. So Casey, I'm going to hand it to you. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Casey Hyneman, Enterprise Technical Director here at Frontier. So a little bit about what we do and what makes Peplink special. So bonding is functionally a packet level SD-WAN. To make that a little simpler, think about if you were in Dallas or LA or Atlanta or one of these cities, known to have terrible traffic, and you're in a helicopter and you're looking down at the interstate during rush hour. Bonding is being able to utilize the freeway and the city streets and the service roads, and to be able to be at a top level and look at every single car and direct every single car to where it needs to go to make that traffic move most efficiently. So literally packet by packet or car by car, we are directing that traffic to the connections that it needs to go to, and that's dynamically. So as connections get overloaded or latency goes higher or have higher jitter, those are directed. Also with hot failover, so Peplink, we can do standard failover, right? You have two connections and your traffic goes here, and then that dies and your traffic now goes here. Now that's session based and IP based. So if you're doing something like SIP trunking, then when you fail from one connection to another, you're going to get a different IP and your call is going to fail. You'll have to reconnect that trunk, remake your call. With hot failover and with bonding, you're going to have a single IP. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 connections behind it. And any of them could fail, go up or down. The connectivity is not impacted, right? And the IP address that you exit on the end is also not going to be impacted. The next slide. So at Peplink, we're really connectivity agnostic. What we do is make unbreakable connectivity, right? And I talk about it like Legos, right? I think the side of the box says connectivity building blocks. Pretty sure because the other term I'm sure is copyrighted. We couldn't put that on our box. But you put in a Peplink router and at that point you can build, right? So you look at Starlink, right? I've done some testing where we were able to get a gig of upload on Starlink. That took 12 terminals, right? We bonded 12 terminals and we got a gig. I've seen as high as 6.9 gig down on Starlink using 20 terminals. And then the same with cellular, right? I've seen cellular where we've bonded 4 or 5 cellular and got a gig. I've seen cellular where we bond a couple cellular, we bond a couple, Starlinks, and also LEO and GEO, where people have done Iridium or other options and bonded all of these. Now with the SD-WAN, you can actually, if you have a GEO satellite, you can say, I need this traffic to go to that GEO, right? My traffic that's really not that latency dependent, right? To go to GEO, and I want to send this stuff to the LEO constellations. It's more latency dependent, and this to cellular, vice versa. And so really you can layer those pieces on, right? You can keep stacking those blocks, So I think an important part of this has always been our idea that traditionally when somebody came to me and said, I need 100 meg upload for backup, right? I need 200 meg up. It's always been the up, that's the problem. And with cellular, that's traditionally been a problem. It's like, not sure we can do that, especially with 4G. 5G is getting better, but still, even with SA, you really need great signal. If you're expecting to get 100, probably not over ever. So with bonding, even in the 4G land, we can bond 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, right? However many you need to bond, and of disparate connections, you can keep layering those on to get where you need to get, with your upload, download, and throughput numbers. Last slide.
Hey, Casey, before we go on, I do have a question. So if you're bonding all of the different wireless components and satellite and everything together, right? Are you limited to just those, or could you add another layer of technology like direct internet access or broadband or something like that to it as well?
Yeah, so you certainly can, right? Like I said, we're connectivity agnostic. And so you can put any terrestrial, connection in there you want. You could put, you could bond Ethernet. You could do ATMs, or I don't think anybody does ATM circuits anymore, but or T1s, something else nobody does anymore, right? But any terrestrial connection you want to do, fiber. We even have some routers that will do fiber native. So you can come straight from your provider, SFP, and not have to do a converter over to Ethernet. And something else worth mentioning so we support really anything that you put in there as a WAN, we're happy to use. We don't care what it is. Anything you can plug in there. Cellular, a lot of our devices come with cellular. Some of them with multiple cellular. Some of them you can get up to 4 or even 8 5G radios in one device. Now with Starlink, we have some special APIs, right? And we're working on those with Amazon Leo, but currently we have some special integrations with Starlink, a special relationship with Starlink where the Starlink shows up as a Starlink, doesn't just show up as a WAN source. It also gives you the ability that I can run reports on my SIM data, right? So I can go and say, hey, how much data have I used across all my SIMs, or just this site, or just this device? And I can do the same with Starlinks. How much of my pooled data has been used at this location, or how much has been used per device? Also DPI engines, so deep packet inspection, where I can see that traffic is, oh, this went to Facebook, and this was email, or this was YouTube. as opposed to just seeing that this much traffic passed through the device.
Oh, great.
So last slide. So again, we have a pretty full breadth of routers. You know, we can go from end to end here. So at the top, you know, is your enterprise routers, right? So that is going to be your, those are usually 1U. We got a couple 2Us, but those are large, 50 gig, 100 gig of throughput, support 4, 6, 7,000, you know, users connected at once. So large 1U rack mount, 2U rack mount. Some of these routers like this SDX Pro here, you can kind of see on the right-hand side of that SDX Pro, there's two just kind of black slots. And so we have several modules produced for those. So with that SDX Pro, I can actually get a module that has 2 5G radios. And so I could get 2 of those and I could add 4 5G radios to that SDX Pro. Also, there's modules that have, you know, 8 PoE Ethernet ports. There's modules that do fiber. So I could add fiber ports or SFP slots, right, into that device natively. You move down into kind of mobility. So we do several things there where, you know, the Dome Pro and the Dome Pro LR. The Dome Pro is, both of those are nice. The LR is very large, mainly for ships and maritime. The Dome Pro is an antenna radio all-in-one. It's a very easy deployment. We also have an option that came out of that Dome Pro where we make an antenna case that you can put any of the devices in that mobile router into this case, and it makes it outdoor rated, you know, weather tight. But in that enterprise mobility, again, the MBX is a very interesting router. You can't really see it here, but actually kind of the back half of the router separates, and it has these modules that will connect to it. And so those modules could be, I think you could do 4 5G radios or 8 LTE radios or 2, or there's 3 or 4 options to add more radios to that. So that's ruggedized mobile device, you know, that has a higher heat range, lower cold range. It's not waterproof, but meant to be deployed in dirty environments, you know, vibration resistant, and give you set up to 4 5G radios. You drop down into the mobile routers, right? And so the BR1 Mini 5G is sort of our smallest device, right? It's really made to a price point. It's about that big. It's very inexpensive. It comes in a 5G and 4G flavor. It's a really great device. It's PoE-N. It's a good device for, I need to connect this forklift, or I need to connect this sensor, or generally I need to connect this thing, right? The BR1 Mini plays really great there. The Pro is a step up from that, higher throughput. You can connect a whole site with that. It'll go up to 1 gig of throughput if the cellular network will give it to you. The Pro, BR2 Pro, is real similar. It's just now you got 2. So you got dual 5G radios that you can bind there. You know, and then you step down into, we now call these enterprise routers. I need to change this slide, but so these are, you know, this B1 5G is basically the BR1 Pro in a different case. So at Peplink, there's a lot of innovation in my mind of the way we look at things, and we say, you know, what makes this BR1 Pro the price that it is, which it's still very competitive and inexpensive compared to our competitors. But a lot of what makes it that price is this IP rating and this external case and this ruggedization. And so it's like, could we take that and make it, you know, work in other environments and be less expensive And so that's the B1 5G, right? We were able to take that Pro, take all the ruggedization out, put it into a kind of, enterprise router box, and add a few ports of a switch on there, right? And really bring the price down, but have the same functionality, same throughput, same modem, same board. Look like you got a question now.
I do. You can tell, right? So yeah, that jogged your discussion there. Kind of jogged something in my mind that I'd heard when we were at Channel Partners. I wonder if you can expand on it a little bit. Can you talk to kind of how Peplink goes to market and why they can be so competitive from a price standpoint on their equipment, even when it's packing in so many great features to it?
Yeah, so what's real important to me is we are Frontier. You see I'm wearing a Peplink shirt, right? So a lot of times we are in and representing Peplink directly. So Peplink, we all talk about, channel led and channel driven. I've not seen any company that is as committed to that as Peplink. Peplink does not have salespeople in the US. There's none. You won't find a single salesperson for Peplink in the US, right? They really lean on and see us as an extension of their team, and we are their sales and marketing arm. Even as far as like our support and the way our support organizations work, right, is that we work directly with them, right? We work directly with the engineers. We don't necessarily, just put a ticket in and wait, right? We have direct connection. We can see those notes. We escalate. And we're able to approve the RMAs directly, right? So instead of it going and having it comes to us, we approve the RMA, so we have that authority. But really that lack of overhead allows Peplink to create these devices with more features at a lower price, and if you ever get a chance to meet the owner at some conference or another running around, like he's a really interesting guy, and he'll tell you like, I want to make cool stuff. And he's like, I don't want to deal with all this other pieces. He's like, I want to make cool stuff. You sell it. I want to make cool things.
Yeah, I think we talked for like 20 minutes just about tech speeds and solutions and things. It was great. So yeah, I agree. I think they're a great conversation, really technically driven, and they're able to incorporate new features into the device quickly, a little bit quicker than some of the other manufacturers. So they're trying to stay on that bleeding edge of technology, and they do a pretty good job with it. So I just wanted to make sure we called that out as well.
Yeah, I think a cool part of the culture here, and I've worked for a lot of manufacturers. Generally, a partner or a customer says, hey, I need this feature. I then have to go put a feature request in, and I have to justify how many millions of dollars or units are going to sell before I even get them to look at it, right? So it's this whole process. Peplink kind of works the other way around. Customer partner says, hey, we need this feature. I go and, like I said, we got a special relationship with them, but I go and I ask engineering or dev, like, hey, can we do this? And so the first thing they'll do is look to see if they can. And if it's easy, they'll be like, sure. Before they ever ask about money or how many units are going to be sold or whatever, they look to see if they can. And if it's something that's simple and doesn't take a bunch of time and isn't going to affect other things or other customers, they'll be like, yeah, man, here you go. Here's a special build that does that thing for you, and that's been completely unique to me because everywhere else I've been, as I'm sure we're all used to, it's like, oh, put in a feature request and go through all of this months worth of arguing, and then maybe we'll look at it and tell you no, right?
Yeah, I've experienced that in my career, not to that extent that it happens super fast. I mentioned I worked at BlackBerry, and there was definitely some feedback that wasn't well received there. So good to work with somebody that gets it and can get it into play fast. So I had another question around enterprise deployment of this technology and kind of how it scales And how do they manage it? When you've got, you mentioned 10 different Starlinks, bonded together with, a terrestrial landline access as well as 5G router. Right? How does an enterprise customer kind of manage that?
Yeah, so good question. So everything's managed in what we call IC2 or in control 2, and that is our cloud platform. Now we don't really license the way I guess most people are used to, right? Like we don't have a license that if you don't pay it, your stuff stops working. What we do is we have what we call Prime Care, and so Prime Care is your warranty, your maintenance, and your support. It's all in one, and that does include your cloud access. So now if you quit paying Prime Care, you wouldn't be able to manage stuff in the cloud. You'd have to go directly to each device, right? But that's the only thing you lose. You can still go to every device. You could still manage them, individually. You just lose the cloud piece. IC2 is also available on-prem. If you have a no cloud ever, this can't leave my network ever customer, we can do it on-prem. And it's not a pared down version. It is the full IC2, right? It is a full export of what we have in the cloud that you can run on-prem and locally. But IC2 gives you the ability, one, to see all your devices, manage all your devices. We have a concept called synergy mode, where if I have a router, say I got this Balance 2500 and I have 10 Starlinks and 4 cellulars connected to it, in synergy mode, I can functionally adopt these devices. And then when I look at them in IC2, it looks like I just have a 2500 that has 12 WAN connections. So all the alerts that come out of Starlink, right? So, dish position, signal acquisition, right? If it's rebooting, you can actually stow it. So all of those alerts, all of those messages, telemetry data, all of that comes through directly into IC2. The same with the cellular signal and all of that. You can reboot the routers, right? So it really brings it into kind of one pane of glass to be able to manage the entire infrastructure.
Oh, that's great. And just to kind of point out for everyone as well, when you work with CTS Mobility and Frontier and Peplink together, we can help take the challenge of diagramming all this out for our customers and really help remove any obstacles that you might come across on deployment, really from start to finish. So good stuff.
Yeah, I say we're fully, kind of, you can go online and see what APIs we have available, but we're pretty open on the API front, so if you want to use IC2, but you say, hey, I have this NOC software that I'm already running and I need it to report, that's great. We got APIs. We can feed you all that stuff. We can feed it to you from IC2. We can feed it to you from the device locally. Like, we have all those options to support those. You can also use SNMP if you wanted something that's extremely chatty and can use a bunch of data, but that is there. So lots of options to integrate any way you want to integrate and give you the single pane of glass.
That's awesome. Yeah, and certainly, we've got tools and resources available to kind of help integrate all that as well. So you mentioned data and using a lot of data, and that jogged another question that I had. What's the flexibility to be able to control the data path when you've got, multiple connections bonded? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when you bond connections, and whether you bond them or not bond them, it functions the same, where you can do, if you don't bond the connections, you're functionally doing a round robin SD-WAN, right? Use this connection, use this connection. You could even go in and say, I want all voice to go over this connection and all data to go here, or even, I want critical traffic, and I define that to go here, and YouTube go here. Even as far as like this kind of stuff that I generally see this used for is like, hey, this SSH to this server is important. This all voice is important. anything with this DSCP class is important and prioritize it, and then everything else is not. Or maybe I have trouble with Spotify where people are streaming Spotify and chewing all my data up, or they're streaming YouTube. I can say, hey, you can use that, but if any of this stuff needs the bandwidth, it's going to squish that, right? It's going to make sure this gets through first. But if there's available bandwidth, sure, stream your Spotify. Even when you get into bonding, the way most customers deploy bonding, right? They'll have the other end in HQ and they'll say, hey, this is all my corporate traffic. Here's my email. Here's, servers we access. Here's Teams, whatever. Here's what I do. And they'll send that across the bonded connection. And then they'll send the other traffic outside of the bonded connection. So you can have the bonded connection and send traffic unbonded. Like you don't have to send an all or nothing. You really can define that traffic down into, the source, destination, DSCP values, DPI engine, right? Really just any way you could think to define it, you can define it and send it exactly where you want it.
So just to distill that a little bit, right? You could take all of your video and Teams traffic and run that over the terrestrial network and anything else, over the bonded network, and then provide different paths for the different the different technologies. That's pretty cool.
So that reminds me of something that's really interesting. So we have a free app. I would suggest that people download. It gives you a segue into how bonding works. So Speed Fusion Connect, it's a free app on your phone. What it'll do when you hit connect, so sitting here in my office, it'll actually bond my cellular and my Wi-Fi on my phone, right? And then I can get on a Teams meeting and I go get in my car and I pull out of the driveway, and normally without it bonded, I pull out of the driveway and you get that bloop, bloop, because you've dropped, and then it, bloop, you're back on cell. And so it'll bond those two connections, and what it'll actually do is duplicate your packets. And so I get in my car and I pull off, I never lose the connection. It seamlessly is now on cellular. But that's like I said, it's a free app, and it's a really cool demonstration of just at a small level what bonding can do for you.
So speaking of cars, I don't see the Max S on here. Is there can you talk a little bit about some of the mobile options that you can do with the bonding with the Starlink and Peplink devices as well?
Yeah, so we have a couple of antenna. They are antenna Max. So really, the reason this came about, if you look at that Dome Pro, right, and this is more of us kind of innovating, listening to our customers. You look at the Dome Pro, and that is an antenna and the cellular radio all in one. Well, when we go to get that certified, right, we now have to certify an antenna and a radio. If I just take them the BR1 Pro 5G to be certified with the carrier, they put it in their RF chamber and they hook their leads to it and they certify it, right? It's a whole different process, and it's much more expensive when the antenna is built in. So the idea was had of like, hey, we could do this same thing and make it less expensive if we produced a case. The Antenna Max S is one of them, the Antenna Max. If we produced a case that we could just slide a router that's already certified in, screw it together, now I have an outdoor rated sealed, device. So the Antenna Max S actually allows a Starlink. Mine's sitting in the house, so I'd grab it. The Antenna Max S houses the Starlink Mini. It also has the Wi-Fi and the cellular antennas. It has a power splitter, and it'll fit the BR1 Pro, the Transit, or the BR1 Mini in there. And so at that point, you have one cable. You can either have one set of DC leads to power it or Ethernet. You can put 90 watt in, and that splitter will power both that way. But one cable in and out, and I now have Wi-Fi, cellular, and Starlink, and I can bond them both. That can be mounted on a pole. It comes with a foam mount. You can mount directly and bolt it in, or even I use these big mag mounts that we sell. You slap it on the roof and hangs on.
Yeah, I know you were talking about your recent trip where you took with that, and you could show the where you had coverage for 5G and Starlink, and how they kind of overlapped, and in dead zones, the one would pick up for the other. Like that, those kind of technologies, I think, as you start talking about moving across, large distances as well, that's pretty cool that you can smooth that whole journey out for connectivity along the way.
Yeah, and it gives you the option too, like I said, with being able to really define where that traffic goes. You know, if I have wireless, if I have cellular on the FWA, that's going to be less expensive than pushing satellite data, especially after a point. After I hit that number, right, it gets expensive and adding more. But if I don't have any kind of cell signal, then right, if you're out in the middle of nowhere with no signal, then Starlink is what makes sense. It's your only real option of any of the satellites, right? So you can define that traffic. I can say, hey, I want to use cellular if I can, but make sure my connection doesn't drop. Use this one as well, right? Or even if, like I said, if you want, you can bond them. So I'm going to use both of these, right? And just give me the most amount of throughput you can give me.
That's great. So I think we're at the point now where we're going to move on and start talking a bit about use cases. So Matt, I'm gonna hand it over to you to talk about a few, and then I've got one I want to make sure that we're calling out as well. But you can go ahead and kick us off here, Matt. Talk about some of the use cases you guys have deployed in the field today.
Appreciate it, Alex. So in the carrier space, we've done a really great job in the last 5 years when FWA launched, and we brought wireless routers to the forefront. You would say we probably made a lot of money together. And on this call, we all made a lot of money on the Verizon side of getting this out there. Those devices are just now coming up for a refresh, or they've been due for a refresh. And customers are pushing back on the partners, on the carrier teams, uh, because they're looking for an enterprise grade, purpose built hardware at an affordable price. And we're accomplishing that at Peplink. We're involved in 1,000+ police cruiser refreshes. We're involved in multi-thousand retail store location refreshes. And they're all working with our competitors, but they're looking for something better. So what I'll say is, if you can remember back to Casey's slide with all those different routers, we've talked a lot about bonding, but really if you need connectivity, this is where Peplink shines. If you're thinking about any other OEM, you need something at the edge, you need redundancy, you need bonding, whatever that is, Peplink fits that need. So let's just say that at the most simplest form, right? So um, in the public sector space, all of our devices, all of our routers are TAA and NDAA compliant, and that's huge. Country of origin, where they're made, making sure that security protocols are there. So the Peplink routers are TAA and NDAA compliant. Where we're seeing a lot of success is that antenna Max S, what you're just talking about. So that Starlink Mini inside of that IP67 high gain enclosure with the Peplink router in there with the SIM card. So they're utilizing it to bond fleet vehicles, and they're putting these on police cars. And I'm like, how are you putting these on police cars? It's not a small device and it's not huge by any means, but they're putting them on there. I'm like, that's not making you, any less of a way to stand out, right? People are going to notice that. And they're telling me, Matt, if I could just get 3 more miles of communication for my officers in the field in these rural locations, they know where their dead zones are. And so by putting this on a Durango or a truck or something like that, that's what they're doing. So it's been super, super popular there, making sure that they get those communications back and forth, as well as camera uploads that they have. Bonding command vehicles for minimum latency and jitter, making sure that real-time video feeds are getting back to HQ. And they're doing dual modems. They're also doing mobile Go kits as well that has the Starlink built inside of those kits. Transit buses, rail systems, Department of Correction buses. They're running guest Wi-Fi. They're running cameras. They have GPS needs, and they're just looking at a total cost of ownership, trying to make sure that it's less, but giving them the same amount of value. POTS replacement's been big in public sector, so it is a one-to-one connection, which is awesome for our Verizon sellers out there. We're seeing this a lot. We've got an opportunity for fax lines where they're trying to replace their old copper POTS lines. This is huge in the public sector space because a lot of contract vehicles that you need to procure on, or your customers are needing to procure, their contract vehicle will not allow for that middle management service, right? So with that POTS adapter, you have just the hardware and you've got the Verizon connection, right? And it does the job and does what it needs to do. Last thing on public sector would be cities and communities. So there's been a big need and uptick in pop-up networks for downtown events. We've got use cases where 20,000 plus visitors come to a downtown Main Street area, and they're trying to get all these vendors on a point of sale system, get their point of sales up and running, make sure there's no latency, they're not losing sales, they don't drop coverage. And so that's been a pretty big topic. On the enterprise side, retail. So Antenna Max S again. So, all your retail locations, box stores out in rural areas, big city, doesn't really matter. They're just trying to bond these connections where they have cellular connection. And then just in case when it does go down, they've got that Starlink back there powering it. So that's one for enterprise. Monitoring assets, so live feed of properties, assets on those properties to see what maintenance needs need to be happening. So they're mounting cameras to the cars, rail cars, what have you, and they're just going through their properties, and those cameras are, sending all that information back so that they know, hey, we need maintenance here, something's wrong, we need to send somebody else to look at it. Healthcare, bonding multi-WAN there. So remote care, if you think about your mobile mammography buses, they're bringing patients in, they're doing real life testing, video feeds back to the doctors, back at the hospitals or back at the main office. Those doctors are reading that, and then they're sending back recommendations, doing video calls, that sort of thing. So it's huge. They can't have any type of latency or jitter in their network. And so that's where it's been popular. Finance, ATMs, branch connectivity, vending machines, even we have enterprise customers that's providing PPE equipment through their, so making sure their employees have the right equipment to do their job. They're wanting to make sure inventory supplies are, real time replenished, and that they know where to send people and replenish those items. So that's just high level, some of the things that we're working on. Again, it's anywhere where connectivity is needed, we're excelling at. Think about Peplink there and all the wonderful things that we can do that's more robust, but we can solve it at the simplest level.
Yeah, I think that's a key, right? Anywhere you need the connectivity and you need that consistent connectivity to be able to kind of bridge everything together, satellite, because you don't really think about satellite necessarily working with 5G on a bus. But being able to put both those devices, into the Max S and then provide that bonding so you get that smooth, experience wherever it goes. I think that's really key. You can do it anywhere, whether it's fixed or if it's mobile, and I think the technology is pretty exciting.
It is, and the best part is, and what customers are really leaning into is, instead of having to manage your Starlink portal and your Peplink portal or your other OEM portal, with Peplink, you can manage that Starlink all together in that in control too, right? And so being able to see their set policies, set parameters, see what's online, what's offline, and controlling your entire fleet of devices has been pretty huge from a productivity standpoint for their employees.
Yeah, that's huge. I've heard that a lot from customers as well, that the management piece is a challenge. That's why I asked Casey earlier about scale and how do you get your arms around all of this technology as you deploy it. I've got a whole lot of really smart engineers that work for me that are Peplink certified as well, and that's the first thing that they mentioned was the portal and the access and the ability to see both Starlink and the Peplink together is really key.
Yeah, it is for sure.
That's great. So, I did want to I want to call on Andy for a couple of questions as well here, and then I have one solution I wanted to showcase. It's a little new and unique. But first, Andy, I did want to ask you about your view from an enterprise customer standpoint. You see a lot, and you talk to a lot of folks. Are they viewing fixed satellite internet as a primary competitor to terrestrial fiber and wireless, or is it a complementary layer, you think?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Definitely a hot topic. I think, in my opinion, and from what we see, it's definitely complementary. In the field, enterprise customers are overwhelmingly treating satellite, particularly Starlink, as a complementary layer, not a replacement for terrestrial fiber or cellular. The conversation's really shifted from, should we use satellite to how do we best integrate satellite into our existing WAN architecture. Peplink's, SD-WAN platform really reflects this reality, and customers are bonding Starlink alongside LTE, 5G, and fiber, using it for failover, load balancing, and coverage extension rather than ripping out terrestrial infrastructure. That's what I see.
I would concur. I think, I've talked to a lot of enterprise customers over the last few years around Starlink in particular and how it fits in. And it is a complementary solution for sure. I'm definitely falling into that category as well. As you were talking, I realized that I forgot to ask a question earlier of Casey, so I'm going to ask of you. And this has to relate to the FCC and kind of how the new rules that they've got set up around foreign and domestic routers. It's caused a little bit of havoc in the industry. How is that, impacting Peplink from your perspective?
Yeah, recent FCC actions targeting foreign, manufactured networking equipment, particularly from Chinese OEMs, are accelerating demand for trusted, vetted hardware from companies like Peplink. So it's a tailwind for us. Peplink manufactures with security and compliance in mind. And as both Casey and Matt mentioned, the majority of our hardware is all TIA compliant, and there are other compliance metrics that we meet for various applications.
Oh, that's great. It definitely has been something that's been a question that's asked of me by a lot of customers as well. So it's great to hear that you guys aren't as impacted by that with Peplink as some of the others are. So that's great. So I do want to cover off a couple of items here, and then I'm going to go into the takeaways from this. But I did want to mention to everyone that our Q&A is open for any questions that might be coming in from anybody out there in the webinar as well that we can get to afterwards. But this is an example. When I came on board here at CTS, this was kind of in a concept phase still, but we've actually deployed a few of these now, and I've actually got one going up in my house, which is super cool. And this is our SOCA technology that takes Starlink bonded with a Peplink device inside of a pointing directional antenna. What it does is the SOCA will actually rotate it so that directional antenna will lock into the strongest signal. We can partner with a company like Helix to put in a secondary SIM as well in there. So now you've got Starlink capability, you've got the ability with Verizon 5G, and you can put a backup carrier, plan on that secondary SIM as well. So you've got three solutions there. And you can even bond it with your terrestrial line like broadband or DIA. I've actually got Verizon Fios at my house that I'm going to be bonding it with. So I'll have all of these technologies on, and I'll have no excuse for my webinar to not be working once that's all in place, because I've got full resiliency there. The great thing about this solution too is that with the pointing device and with a BR1 Mini from Peplink inside it, traditionally the routers that are external routers, they're omnidirectional antennas. So that's number one. Number two, they're expensive. In this case, for under $1,000, I've got a external router now with a directional antenna. And I mean, just to give you an example of some of the increases in speed and RSRP, which is the signal strength that's used to measure how strong your cellular connection is. What we saw was inside with the router with the ears on it and everything getting the cellular signal, you'd have an RSRP of about 110. And then outside, I can get that down to about 80, and lower is better. So like that's a really, really significant improvement. You're going from bad coverage to great coverage. when you do that. So those technologies all piece together with this. This is something that CTS is really, really good at. We are really good at taking multiple technologies, managing the process, whiteboarding it out with you, the customer, and making it simple so that you can go out and deploy. And then we manage the deployment teams, putting all these things together from start to finish. I've got a team of SAs, project managers, and deployment specialists that are all helping to make this as seamless as possible for the customer and the end user as we go to deployments. So I did want to showcase this technology. We're going to talk a little bit more in our next webinar series about the SOCA and how it fits into to additional deployments too. But I thought this fit really nicely with this discussion, and again with the Peplink BR1 Mini in that pointing device, which is finishing certification right now. I've got an early version of it, and it works great. So really neat technology I wanted to show. So let's talk about what happens next. So I want to make this simple for everyone. We're CTS Mobility. I know a lot of the teams here like to call us the easy button for everyone, whether it be our customers or our Verizon sales teams that we work with. If you're a customer, if you want to learn more about any of the technologies that we talked about today, reach out to your Verizon rep to schedule a follow-up. And if you don't know who that is, reach out to me. I worked there for 10 years in global enterprise, and I know just about everybody there. And I have access to be able to find out who that rep would be and make that connection for you. So please feel free to ping me about it if you need help in that area. But also think about other areas in your business that need bandwidth and resilience. This is this technology that we're talking about today is here. It's not futuristic. It is being deployed by lots and lots of customers today, as Matt talked about. And then, lastly, for customers, make sure you send this recording to anyone on your teams that may benefit from watching it. We're going to make it available to everybody here afterwards. You'll get an email with a link to be able to download the recording and watch it at your convenience. For our Verizon partners, follow up with myself or with Matt for more details. I've included both of our emails here for everyone. Introduce your customers who have questions about Starlink and 5G and bonding and all of that fun stuff that we talked about. If they need bandwidth for upload speeds increased, I know there's a lot of customers out there that have made that request of me and my teams in the past. So it's something that we can help with and make it simple for you. If you've looked at sites and analyzed them for 5G coverage, but they're at capacity for 5G or they're not approved for 5G coverage because they're in a fringe spot, check with us because the 4G plus Starlink service is an option. And if you deploy 4G technology on 5G equipment, gives you a glide path for the future. And I know there's some really attractive price plans that are available there at Verizon to be able to future-proof your technology move from 4G to 5G. And everything we talked about here is future-proof for sure. And then lastly, for the Verizon peeps, same thing applies. Make sure that you forward this recording to any of your peers that may benefit from watching it. So with that, I think we will move. Do we have any questions in the Q&A? I'm trying to pull it up here. It's hard with both the presentation.
There's a good many, and Casey's been replying back, and I've replied back to some as well. So
excellent.
I'm trying to keep up. There's a lot.
Good. Anything that we haven't been able to keep up with yet? If you've got it open, let's see if we can answer them. Stop so that way I can actually get into all the windows.
Sorry, there's quite a few.
39 new questions. That's fantastic. Okay. How does packet loss mitigation work during live link transitions between fixed wireless and Starlink? Casey, you wanna take that one?
Can you repeat it one more time?
how does packet loss mitigation work during live link transitions between fixed wireless and Starlink? So how does failover work, right? Like when you're failing over from from one link to the other.
Yeah, so trying to think of exactly how to put this. So generally the way the internet works, the way all these things work is you have a session, right? So it kind of it packs up what you're doing in one nice little bundle, and in that session is multiple packets. Think about it like you're going to the airport and all the shirts in your bag are packets and your bag is the session. You can't walk into TSA and just drop all your shirts on the belt. They're going to tell you no thank you and send you on back, right? You need a bag. I need that session. And so generally I send a session out on the internet. Now, in traditional failover, say I had kind of two paths to go. Traditional failover, I would send my bag, I'd send my session, and if in the middle of that something broke, I would just lose that session. TCP is pretty redundant. It would start a new session and would go the new path. Where you're going to notice that is on phone calls. If you're on SIP trunks, you're doing phone calls, those sorts of things you'll notice, right? You'll lose your session, it'll reconnect, and you'll be back going again. Real similar to I'm on a Teams call and I go get in my car and I pull out of my driveway and my Wi-Fi drops. So my Teams looks that little noise, that'll boop, boop, and then it picks back up and I'm fine again. That's traditional. We can also do that. With bonding at packet level, you can duplicate, triplicate, quadruple, however much you want packets. So I can send that same packet down 2 connections. Right. And so at this point, it's like I'm sending the same 2 shirts 2 different ways. Right. Because I now can actually break this down into the individual, shirts or individual packets, however you want to look at it. I can send the same thing twice, and if one of them gets lost, the second one still got there. Right? So if that's too much in the weeds?
No, I think that was good. I think I like the 2 t-shirts example too. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. Like I think if you're registered and you've got a question asked and we don't get to it, we'll try to post some of these after the fact for sure. I'm going to take 2 here kind of together, and I'll grab these. But there's 2 questions back to back. What ROI metrics resonate most with enterprise leadership when justifying always on investments? So I'll start with that. I think always on is really all about what's the damage that's done when it's not on, right? That's how you get your ROI, and your justification for making sure you're deploying the technology like this. How much does it cost you when you're down? And look, we're coming into summer. It's backhoe season. Like, I I've been the recipient of a lot of those calls when the guys that are operating the backhoes cut the fiber lines, right? And you're down. So a solution like this that provides you resiliency for the crazy guy with the backhoe that takes out your fiber line and the telco's fiber line and everything else at the same time, right? You still got satellite. That is the nice part about this solution is that we've got 3 paths that we can actually bond together and make sure that you've got connectivity on. It's usually only been 2 paths in the past. And Andy, I see did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I came off mute.
Sorry,
No,
you guys
you're
are
good.
fighting for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so no, I just had this come up in a conversation, and I was working with a customer that their CTO was having a conversation, and they said, Matt, this is multi-hundred locations, right? And he said, if I have one location go down, it was a manufacturing plant, that's $20 million per day. So when I brought to him $300,000 for this solution, right, for multi-hundreds of sites and having always on connectivity, it was a no-brainer, right? So it's just understanding that ROI of what it means to them and loss of productivity and downtime.
Yeah, and you pair that with the total cost of ownership for Peplink. in many cases being less than half than many of our competitors, I mean, it's a no-brainer decision for enterprises.
Yeah, agreed. So the next one was, what are the hidden cost organizations should prepare for during deployment? And this one I've got a lot of expertise on. I've done over 50,000 FWA deployments across my teams in my history. So I've seen just about everything there is to see when it comes to a deployment. And I'm going to knock on wood because I'm sure that means we'll find something new tomorrow. But look, the biggest issue is just making sure that you are prepared and minimizing truck rolls. That is, those are the hidden costs. That how many times you need to send out an installer to a site is a big deal. And what we do at CTS is we measure twice before we cut. Right? We do a site survey. We make sure that we have all the placements that are out. We get a whole team of individuals that are working together from start to finish, architecting the solution, working with the project managers, working with the deployment teams, and then providing support while they're on site. That gives us a 90% first time installation rate, which is it's over 90%, which is unheard of in the industry. So because of that little secret sauce, we were able to minimize a lot of the cost in deployment when you're doing these really highly technical solutions. We make it easy for you so that our IT directors, CIOs, don't have to worry about all those hidden costs that creep up when you're doing the deployments. Andy, Matt, anything, Casey, anything you want to add to that as well from your perspective?
No, you covered what I would have said.
Great.
No, that's a great answer.
All right. Couple about emerging technologies and satellite connectivity evolving over the next 3 to 5 years. I think I'll just kind of leave it with that. Like what are your all's thoughts around where this is going and what else we can expect to see here in the future as the technology continues to evolve?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Casey.
I would just say, satellite is becoming more prevalent. We know, without saying any names, that one provider has a pretty big head start on the rest of them. So there are more companies that are launching satellites at a pretty steady rate. That competition changes things, right? The landscape looks a little different when you're the only person in the game as to when you got 3, 4, 5 competitors with you. So certainly in the future, I see more choice, right? More availability of that choice. Also, as just the networks get built out in general, because the way this works is, you're connected from here up to the satellite as thousands of people maybe, or hundreds, and that satellite then beams all its data down to a base station somewhere in that area that then backhauls that data, right? So now if you got one base station for 50 satellites, that's thousands of users going to it. So not only are more satellites going up, but also more base stations, right? So the amount of bandwidth and throughput that can be supported is increasing. And with that increases the use cases, right? I remember when I started college, we had a T1 at college, which is 1.5 meg, and we were really excited. We're like, man, we got a T1, like a whole T1. And now, like, you can't get your phone to go to Google Maps hardly on 1.5 meg.
Yeah.
So like as that availability of data increases and to have data anywhere and everywhere, so does the availability for use cases, right? It's the art of the possible starts to come in of what can we do, right? Now that I can, connect to that sensor or that dam or whatever research, even into, getting nerdy and biology and those sorts of things. I can be in the middle of the jungle in Brazil and the Amazon rainforest and still have connectivity working on, researching some new frog species or something, right? Like it's kind of boundless of where this can go.
Yeah, and I know there's another question about AI edge-driven architecture as well, into it, and that's from my perspective. I think that's another area that is just going to evolve with all this, right? Like as your upload and your uplink requirements from AI and edge learning, kind of increase with the the end applications, having something that you can distribute and provide reliable connectivity on at your endpoint is going to be really, really important. So I think that plays right into this as well. There are a lot of questions in here. I think that we're definitely not going to get to all of them here today before we're out of time. Actually, we are out of time, aren't we? So look, I do want to make sure that I thank the panel. We'll get to the questions and we'll post those as a follow-up as well for everyone. Look, takeaways for this, right? I think if you've still got questions, reach out to myself, to Matt. We'll make sure you get pointed in the right direction if we can't answer them, for sure. And you just remember, we're here to make everything easier for you. It is when you start doing some of these technologies, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. When you start talking about bonding 3 different platforms together and making it seamless, we're here to take that and make it easy for you, so we can help you, walk you through it, do the whiteboarding, do the architectural planning, and like I said, help manage the deployment from start to finish, and we can put that all on your Verizon bill. So that's the takeaway. I want to thank the panel. Andy, Matt, and Casey, thank you so much for joining today and having this conversation. Looking forward to having many more in the future.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough, Alex, for your partnership, and excited about growing our business together. Thank you.
Great. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all you out there that have questions that we didn't get to as well. Reach out and we'll be happy to work with you. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I hope the rest of the week goes great for everyone.